Well, welcome back to the Outer Circle Inner Stillness, Conrad, and I'm glad to see you. I am delighted to have you back to hash out some ideas around counseling, addiction, and military, supporting our veterans and our armed forces. And yes, I'm excited to see where this conversation goes as well. For those who don't know you or need a refresher since our last conversation, where in the world are you now and what are you up to? What do you offer to the counseling world, the recovery world, etc.?
Sure. All right. So at present moment, I'm living in Fairbanks, Alaska. And yes, it is, there's still snow outside and the northern lights are still going on even now, April 16th. It's actually pretty wonderful up here, even though it's cold. I offer therapy services in the states of Alaska, Florida, Missouri, Texas, and South Dakota. And I do professional and coaching services around the world. I've had clients in Australia, Vietnam, United Kingdom, parts of Europe. So I've had clients from all over. I am also a certified sex addiction therapist. And so I do that like CSAT work in the 5 states I listed. But I also do help sex addicts with coaching or with my coaching services as well. It just looks a little different. So, but I also do specialize in men's issues and trauma. And so those 3 areas are pretty much my bread and butter, and where I see most of my clients is somewhere in those realms.
Cool. That is a really fun combination of things.
It is, especially when they all happen to the same person. You're like, we got a lot to dive into.
Yeah. It occurs to me that for me in my life, I think I would run into that same person and be like, wow, this is cool and exciting and everything. And just, because I'm a little bit weird like that. But it occurs to me that perhaps, some of these issues you throw out of like, men, or trauma, or like sex addiction, like there's maybe like some scary things, or there's this sense that those can be a little bit scary. I don't know. Is that something you still run into, or is that like a hangover from a darker time?
No, I still run into that. Those are taboo topics. I'm a man. I don't have issues. This is how society made me. This is how my culture made me. I don't have any troubles. Like, I can take care of this on my own. I'm good with my emotions. I just suppress the ones that I don't want. Just show anger and happiness because I'm a man and that's all I need to show. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's sex. You can't be addicted to sex. I mean, it's just porn, or it's just, sexual intercourse. I mean, no one's getting hurt by it. I still hear all those things.
Yeah. Yeah, they are there. Well, with what you were saying about these messages that men seem to say to themselves, I had this interesting experience here locally for me in Portland, Oregon. I connected with an anti-trafficking organization called EPIC, spelled with a K. And as of this recording, I'm still just kind of getting to know them. We're still exploring like, hey, what could we do with each other? And I might try to offer like a mindfulness workshop through them or something like that. But we had one meeting recently where we were talking about a lot of these things all together as well, recognizing, one of their target demographics. It's, people, usually men who purchase sex from people. And they have this goal to have that be stopped, and they have this goal to protect women. And that very quickly gets them into this conversation around, well, what does it mean to be a healthy man? And what is a healthy expression of masculinity? And so it was kind of fun to be stepping into this environment where like that's a conversation that's being taken really seriously, and there's a lot of people really invested in discovering those answers.
It really is, but we also have to look that has shifted. I mean, even over the last decade. But I'm being a combat veteran. I also am working. Like, one of my jobs is working with active duty Army personnel, making sure their mental health is good. if you said, what's a healthy male? 100% guarantee you, I'm going to get a different answer than you're going to get, because the culture and the job is going to be so different. And so we have to keep that in mind, is what might be healthy for one might be detrimental to another. Because if you're going into a war, and thankfully we're at peacetime right now, at least at the time of this recording, who knows what's going to happen. But at the time of this recording, we're able to embrace the softer side and be like, okay, cool. Being a man is caring and respect, and, treating others with dignity and respect and all of this. And you want to say, oh, well, it should be that in the military too. No, it's not going to be. And especially if you're at wartime, you're not going to do that, because your primary goal is, I'm going to save myself and I'm going to save my battle buddies and make sure we come back alive. So I don't care what I do, as long as it's not breaking Geneva Conventions. I'm going to make sure that we come back alive. And you could call me a monster, but you know what? I'm proud of what I did. And so I'm always very hesitant when it comes to, what does it mean to be a man? Because there's so many ways we can go into that. And we do need a lot of men who are, kind, nurturing, caring, and all of that. But we also need the men who are like, no BS. I'm going to kick down this door and make sure that everybody on the other side of that door, that's the enemy, making sure they're hostile, is put down, so that we can have the freedom for you to be the way that you want to be over here. And we also have to realize that coming back from environments like that, we're going to run into a lot of issues, because it's so easy to train somebody to be like that. But it's so much difficult, or a lot more difficult, to train them to not be like that after you train them to be like that. You could train them to be able to kill effectively within a year, easy. Mm-hmm. But undo that could take a decade plus.
Yeah.
I'm glad that the organization like Epic is there and they're talking with you and all of this. I'm just standing on the side of, combat veterans and, active duty military personnel, and hearing what I hear on those sides, and hearing how it's so hard to integrate back into society. And we're not trying to, and I'm just broad blanketing this. It's not every military or combat veteran is like this, but they're like, we're not trying to do harm or, do bad, but you have to at least recognize us and what we sacrificed as well, because we're not the same as before we joined the military, before we went to war, and we'll never be like you are. And that's okay. So it's an interesting conversation to have with both sides, which
I think so.
Kind of goes off topic of sex trafficking a little bit.
But I think that one of the values that I see of a conversation like this is recognizing, like you're saying, the challenges facing military personnel, active duty, retired, etc. Because you're right. The struggles, the experiences you wonderful people face and have faced, they're unlike anything that we do experience in civilian life. Like, probably, I mean, maybe there's like a couple exceptions, but something like counseling, something like building emotional inheritance, emotional intelligence is your inheritance.
We'll go with inheritance.
Okay, yeah, I could use some inheritance. There's this idea of like, let's stop sex trafficking, protect women, and build up healthy men in this way. There's a lot of really beautiful things there, but there's a way where I think someone in your perspective gets to represent the extreme experiences, and a belief system that doesn't factor in the extremes is missing something. So these conversations around healthy masculinity, I would say rightly so, do emphasize, hey, men should be able to talk about their feelings. Men should be able to be gentle and grow a garden and be artsy and creative. And that's really necessary and valuable. But even my non-military other guy friends who are, husbands, fathers, hunters, builders, things like that. A lot of them have this capacity within them where they say, well, I mean, you threaten me in mine, I'm going to do whatever needs to be done. And
Exactly. Yeah.
and we could maybe even say that is part of healthy masculinity. It's
Hmm.
a part, not the whole part. And should
Correct.
that get overemphasized and glorified, it's an imbalance. But yeah, it would make sense that like a healthy expression of manhood would include the capacity for force, for defending, for protecting
Right.
when needed.
Right.
And
But this also kind of goes into, what does Hollywood glorify? And
yeah,
that's the men who go out and are violent, or, like one man goes down and takes down an entire gang because they, were traumatizing a city, or, hurt someone or killed someone they loved. And it's not so much that Hollywood glorifies it, it's what people keep paying money to see. So Hollywood keeps making those movies.
mhm,
And you try
yeah,
to come out with a different movie, and people don't go and pay for it as much. And so Hollywood's like, well, we're not making money there. So let's go and make this, action movie, the shooter movie, these military movies. And I can tell you, living in war is not like the movies at all.
I'm really
So,
glad you brought this up. So in the we didn't really plan this super well. I'm really glad you brought that up because I was actually thinking about that aspect of this. So I'm glad we got to go there. But I was thinking about the way uh, men are portrayed in media. It's definitely a thing. The way violence is portrayed, and the way military service is portrayed in particular. Like this idea, like the soldier, from my civilian perspective, seems to often be, well, if it's not outright demonized, it's like very much like glorified and lifted up as like that. Wow, the soldier, the noble soldier, or wow, look at how
right.
strong he is, or kind of the caricature of like, hey, look at this guy with his big guns. Aren't those big
Hmm.
guns cool? Uh, so I mean, that even showed up in the recent hit movie Dune 2. I mean, this isn't a movie review, but there's some interesting male characters there. But it's very
Right.
conspicuous. Like throughout the movie, there's this exploration of like, what is strength, and it's like, well, strength is faith. Strength is sandworms. And it's the military guy that's like, strength is nukes, and he's very
Yeah.
blunt about that. And I was like, oh well, we know where he's at.
Right.
So yeah,
But if you think about it, there are world leaders or wannabe world leaders in multiple countries who are like, we got the nukes and we'll use them.
yeah, yeah,
So, I mean, it's direct representation of how society thinks,
yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah. And it's my yeah, I guess that's my beef with like masculinity in the media, and with like the Marvel movies in particular, which I love Marvel movies and I love superheroes, but I often feel disappointed how many of these stories they have these like great character arcs and all of this character growth, but like the movie hinges on at the end who can throw the biggest punch or
Right.
who can deliver the decisive blow. So it ends up being like a contest of strength and force anyway.
Hmm.
And it would be nice to like have some heroes depicted that like win some other way, uh, by like being the most loyal or like the most enduring or the most gentle or something. That would be nice.
Yeah, it would be. But again, with where the money flows, people are not going to pay to go see that. They're going to go
Yeah,
pay to see the who can throw the biggest punch, who can, you know, keep putting one step in front of the other, because it's so ingrained in our society from history. I mean, that's where everything was. World War One, World War Two, Korea, Vietnam, you know, all these conflicts, even the conflicts, Gulf Storm, uh, Iraq, Afghanistan, all these, it's how hard can we hit and keep going forward?
yeah,
When we get hit, let's just keep going forward. And that's
mm,
pretty much drilled into us time and time again. I
I
mean,
get it.
there's one movie that really sums it up really like perfectly. Rambo. It's just called Rambo. It's the fourth one in the series, and he basically talks about how peace is an outlier. Humans are fighting creatures. We're always at war somewhere in the world. And, he, I would just say, go watch that scene. It says it perfectly.
Yeah.
He's like talking on a boat dock to somebody else. And I mean, just the way he explains it, it it's spot on the money, you know.
Yeah. That
So
makes sense.
yeah,
Yeah. So, so with this idea of, so we're helping professionals, we're counselors, you do coaching. We work with men who are struggling through addiction, struggling to be present in their worlds,
yeah,
to heal from past pain. Um, so given this context we've outlined around what society is, what media is, how war is handled, what are, if we haven't said them already, what are some particular challenges that are faced by men and women in the armed forces who are, well, I guess there's a lot of ways you could take this, grappling with
right,
identity, grappling with like, how do I connect with the world?
right. So a big one is emotional dysregulation. Um, I mean, being forced to suppress all emotions except for anger and happiness. Then coming out and you spent so long, like some people join at 18 and they get out at 38, maybe 40, um, after 20 years in the Army. I'll just say Army because that's the branch I was in. And they're like, who am I now? I was told, okay, get in formation at 5:30 in the morning, PT by 6 a.m., go home, shower, eat, come back, work until 5 if I'm lucky, and rinse, wash, repeat. Oh, combat deployment. All right, go do that. But I'm told what to wear. I'm told how everything's supposed to look. There's a direct chain of command. I know what goes on. And then they get thrust out into the world. And luckily, the military is doing a better job at the transition, but it's still not perfect. And I doubt it'll ever be perfect. Um, and it's really hard for some people to become a veteran and integrate back into society because it's that, who am I? What is my role now? What is my purpose? I just spent 20 years giving myself to my country. And, some people are like, hey, thank you for your service. I really appreciate it. Others are demonizing me because I don't think like them. And they're like, you're either with me or you're against me. Like, what am I getting myself into? Or they're like, yeah, I have this, 26-year-old who's straight out of, a grad program who's my boss, and they don't know what the real world is like. And I'm 40 and I've done more than them in their short life. I've done like way more than what they've done. Seen like a big thing I hear is a lot of combat veterans are like, I've seen the brutality that people can like push on each other and how horrible people can be to each other. And coming back, it's really hard to unsee what I've seen. And people just don't get it. And so they're really struggling with the thoughts and, what do I do at this point? How do I connect with people who haven't been in that same situation? And so this is where they're like, all right, I'm probably going to join the VFW or like meet other veterans in my area. And, I'll be friends with them, but it's kind of hard to branch out. So for some people, not for all. And so really that identity is the big thing. Hopefully that answers the question. I kind of went on a ramble. So
I think it does. I mean, it's just, part of what I'm curious about, again, not having had that experience and curious to learn about it is like, what's that experience like and what are the main challenges? And so, hear you talking about how, you go through these big experiences that expose you to the brutality of the world and, the full range of how humans can be to each other and all of the bad ways. And then,
mhm,
you know, it's like you said, like you can't unsee what you've seen. And uh, when no one else knows what that is, or no one else can really join you in that or appreciate like the value, the meaning, the weight of that, then it kind of
Mhm.
becomes yours to carry alone. And that's like a really awful thing to carry all by yourself.
Right.
So it sounds like
Yeah.
you're after carrying these things on top of now figuring out, well, now what do I do now? Go work at FedEx? Or,
Right.
do I just go be happy, do barbecues now? Do I, sing happy Jesus songs and pretend everything's all good? Or, what do I do? So,
Right. Yeah. And, that kind of goes into the addictions is the military is very big on drinking. You have pilots who drink as a way to, bond with each other, and they have like drinking rituals and things like that. You have, infantrymen, Marines who go out to the bars and they just drink into a stupor. Some even drink until they're so drunk they just go fighting. Um, Alcohol is really pervasive because, I mean, if you look back in history, they're like, all right, you can uh, rape, loot, and plunder. And drinking's in there too, because after a battle, you're like, I've seen so much, I've done so much, I just have to drink to just forget everything. And it kind of also goes into, we're both CSATs, and goes into the sexual aspect where, oh, I'm not going to drink because I want to stay in control. Or maybe they do drink and they're like, I just drink and I have sex. You know, I use sex as my way to escape. I'm a man. I deserve sex. She's attractive to me. I'm going to go say what I need to say in order to get into her pants. And it's okay because it's just sex. And they're like, it is what it is. It's our culture. I mean, it's been that way for thousands of years. So it's it's a beast that unfortunately is not going to go away anytime soon.
mhm. But there's a context for that beast. And that sounds like that's a big piece of understanding and connecting with these men and women. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we're kind of emphasizing men a little bit.
Yeah,
You know, yeah, people. Yeah, I would imagine these guys don't just wake up one day and think, "I want to be like this raping, pillaging monster someday." They,
right.
there's a journey
Yeah,
you go on to get to where that feels like the only right thing or the best possible thing,
right.
um, and I'd imagine that
And,
giving
oh,
space and time.
and now yeah, and I'm going to say, we're not saying that they're all out there raping. I just use
Right.
that from past experiences. Now they try to make it more consensual, and the military is actually really good at um, letting people speak up if there is a rape scenario, so or situation. So that is fantastic. That it's a lot more open and talked about. But the consensual sex is like tons of promiscuous consensual sex is still prevalent. So
Yeah. Um, Somewhere in the counseling literature, it might even be somewhere in like the CSAT literature. I think there's this idea that the person who acts out, they're not doing it to feel good; they're doing it to feel less. What's
mhm.
your thought? Is that you're nodding? Okay,
Oh,
that's
100%.
yeah.
It's get out of what's up in here. Like I've seen so much, I've done so much. I don't want to think about it. I'm going to go have sex, or I'm going to go and focus on this one individual that I find attractive. And not just that one, but maybe I'm on a dating app and I've got like three, five. I've even heard of like I have one client right now who's got like seven that he's juggling at one time. And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, yeah, just however I feel, I just find the one that gives me attention, and then I just focus on,
Mm-hmm.
her for the moment. So it's
Yeah.
yeah,
Which again, I mean, from a strategic standpoint, if it's just like I'm pretending to shift into like, like this, like more like
right.
combat mode of like, okay, I've got a problem to face. Where can I find resources? How do I allocate those resources to best like meet the problem? Like on that level,
Yep.
I mean, that's brilliant. It's complete brilliance. Um, Only it's not actually combat. It's a relationship. So
Right.
it's but um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I guess one of the so as we work for sobriety with these folks, and again, sobriety could look a lot of different ways. Harm reduction is
Right.
good, abstinence is good, all of that. We need you and I know that after our studies that, a big component of sobriety is being present, is,
Hmm.
having an awareness of oneself, being able to feel feelings, be able to be in touch with your story, being able to like be present with other people and their stories. And, um, I mean, super big question, but I guess what is helpful for someone coming out of the armed forces who's wanting to undertake that journey to become more present again
Yeah.
in their civilian life?
Healthy connections, um, not isolating yourself, and thinking you're the only one that's gone through this. Um, Finding healthy friends, joining organizations, maybe that's the VFW. I just keep going back to the VFW because they're in pretty much every city. Um, find an organization like that. Um, Maybe you do volunteering, something that helps you reconnect with society so that you're not sitting at home with your thoughts, with your, boiling emotions that you're trying to suppress and just failing miserably at. So you're not sitting at home with a bottle. It's going out and finding those individuals that can be good friends. And, see if you can make a friend or two that's also a veteran. They'll understand what's going on. Maybe it's a Vietnam era veteran, and you're like, oh, hey, cool. We're just sitting down talking, and yeah, you get it, and I get what you're saying. Different wars, different experiences in some ways, but yeah, we know what it's like to go through and have like be in fear of death every day. And
Mm.
so you're able to have somebody kind of walk that path with you. And, if you're lucky, somebody who's walked it before and can help show you the hurdles to overcome and the paths to avoid and be like, yep, this is your route to a
Mm.
better life.
Yeah.
So finding that.
Yeah. Yeah. In what you're talking about here, there's a component of, if you're physically getting up and getting out, if that's an option. So, and that engages the
Right.
body. But, being
Yep.
around people here you implying both like individual and group settings, and, group settings that come with activity and purpose, and,
Yep.
uh, you know, becoming useful or retaining one's usefulness.
Yeah. There's this saying I like to tell my clients. It's lead with the mind and the body follows. Lead with the body and the mind follows. And so whichever one is sluggish, you lead with the other one. So let's say your mind is sluggish, get up, walk around, go outside and, you know, enjoy hopefully a nice day. If it's not nice out, get up, walk around, clean your place, start doing some activity that gets your mind going. Or if your mind is active, but your body's not, get your mind active, turn something into a game so that you then get up and, yeah, I'm not talking like a video game where you're on a console or anything. I'm like, yeah, get up and be like, all right, you know, can I walk to the end of the block? And as you do that, you're like thinking of things. You're like, okay, I got this going on later this week. I want to apply to school. So these are the schools that I'm thinking about because I want to apply for, well, I'm thinking this degree or that degree. And then you're just going through things in your head, but you're walking as you do it. And so all of a sudden your body's becoming more active, just like your mind is. So lead with the one that has the more energy. So it brings up the one that has less.
Hmm. Start with what you can do, and you
Yes.
go from there. Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I'm gonna completely steal that
Go
for
for it.
people that work with
I
you.
stole
Yeah.
it from someone else, so go
Okay,
for
good.
it.
Pass the stealing on. Yeah. Uh, yeah. Speaking of the mind, so I know a major theme on this show is the inner life. So we talk about
Yeah.
spirituality, we talk about mindfulness, talk about like the inner stillness, the inner awareness, using internal family systems language. We talk a lot about the self energy, unblending from the parts to be in the self, becoming aware of the stories we tell ourselves. What's been your experience with incorporating these inner disciplines, mindfulness work into work with military folks? Is it effective? Any special considerations?
Yeah, it is effective. With the military, they're chaplains in like at every base. But religion is not necessarily, or spirituality is not something that's really pushed out to the masses. It's available if you need it. And no, I have met some chaplains that were just not nice people, but for the most part, they're really nice people. So you could go up and talk to them. And even if you're a different spiritual belief, they'll still talk to you. They're like, we're here for everybody. And if we don't know the answer, we'll find the answer for you or find someone that can answer it for you. But especially when they get out, one of the big things I like to say is, look, you have to have something external of you. If it's addiction and they're like, well, I don't believe in God, so I don't like this, this 12-step program because I keep talking about God. I'm like, all right, think of it as something external of you. Maybe God in this point or a higher power is the group. Something external of you that holds you accountable. And they're like, oh, okay. And I also like to challenge them. I'm like, all right, what if you go do yoga? What if you do meditation? What if you go walk in the woods? Up here in Alaska, you got to be careful walking in the woods. You got to for the
Yeah.
moose. Watch out for them, the bears. But go and just connect with nature. Put your bare hand on a tree. And what I found is interesting is even if it's cold outside and you put your hand on a tree, the tree's warmer than the ambient temperature outside. And so it really helps us be like, oh, okay, if I really focus, on my on touch and feel the bark, feel the tree, it gets us out of our mind. And I've had clients come back and they go, you know what? I was kind of jumbled in my mind and I just reached out and I touched a tree. And it felt like it was just this cleansing moment for me. And then I've had others that went out and they're like, I tried hugging a tree and it didn't work. And I'm like, that's fine. Not for everybody.
Yeah. I love that idea so much though, of like literally grounding yourself. Like you get out and you get in contact with this other organism sometime, and depending on the tree, it could be like ancient. Like, I mean, especially if it's a bigger tree. I mean, those are centuries old and there's centuries of life and endurance and, foresty wisdom that goes on there. And I'm not competent enough to speak about like interconnected tree root systems, although I hear that's a thing, and like trees are this like really symbiotic responsive organism. So someone should research that and then ask the guest on the show and I'll say yes. So because they become a great model for people. But yeah, I love that idea. Just like this really simple like make contact, like reach out and get in contact with something outside of yourself.
Yeah, and that's why I tell people, I'm like, look, don't isolate yourself. So my personal belief is we're all connected by energy. Me to you, me to inanimate objects, me to trees, to animals, to everything. We're all connected by energy. And when we isolate ourselves, we're severing that connection. And so we need to reconnect with others, reconnect with nature. Some people are like, hey, I really love big cities because there's so much energy going on and there's always something to do. It's like, yeah, there's so much energy from people in that small area. That's why you're feeling it. And they're like, this is great. This is perfect for me. But then others are like, that's too much energy. And it's like me personally, I'm like, that's a concrete jungle. It's nice to visit from time to time, like once every few years. But give me my outdoors, give me the trees where it's more of a natural energy, and just let me reconnect with that and reground myself that way and recharge myself. It removes the negative that I have and gives me the positivity back. Because speaking of trees and their root systems, like trees actually shunt nutrients to a tree that's needing it. And so they don't store it and they don't hoard it. They're like, oh, this tree, we're connected by a root structure and that tree is, needing nutrients and we have an ample supply. So we're going to send nutrients that way. It's a great analogy for humans. It's if we have enough, don't be like, and I'm just going to name drop and be like, don't be like a Bezos or Musk and be like, I just want more and more and more. Give it to the people that are needing it, like if we have an abundance, why not give it to somebody? Now, I'm not saying be communist and stuff, but I'm
Hmm.
like, at a certain point, it's just excess, and
Yeah.
just help other people, and you're going to feel way better being able to help other people.
Hmm. Yeah. That kind of move, I mean, it shows up in a lot of spiritual traditions as well. Generosity, almsgiving, caring for the poor, seeing the poor first of all, and recognizing them as humans and worthwhile, and then of your abundance, giving out, and depending on your resources and your overall strength and what other resources you have, sometimes giving out of your need. And yeah, like that doesn't like fix poverty in the whole world. It's not meant to do that. It's meant
Right.
to connect you to something bigger than yourself. It's meant to transform you into the kind of person who's generous like that. Which,
Mhm.
and again, trying to frame this in terms of our friends in the military, and I'm wondering,
Yeah.
I know, like that switch from like I've been trained to be this human killer, now trying to make this journey to I can be this really generous person. I'm imagining that
Right.
would be quite a journey. What's
It,
your thought
it
there?
is. No, I mean, I agree. And as you were saying that, it reminded me of a story that Don Miguel Ruiz wrote in one of his books that was passed down in the Toltec traditions. And I'm not going to go into the story, but I believe it was either in the Four Agreements or the Fifth Agreement, I believe was the book that it was in. Um, but yeah, he talks about like the most well-renowned soldier uh, in a country and thinking he's like the best there is, and this little boy telling him he's not. And he goes into the jungle to find this old man, and the old man takes him through a journey that lasted years until he realized, oh my goodness, I'm so far removed from everybody and everything. And then he learned to connect with everything again, all the animals, the plants, even reconnect internal with himself. And at the end, it's like, yeah, he felt, you know, uh, like sad for all the people that he killed. And then he became the master that lived out in the middle of the jungle. It's a wonderful story. And so I'd recommend your listeners go take a look at it, because it's very much what you're saying right there is we're one person and we have to really transform. And when we transform, we realize how good of a person we can become and how our experiences can be used to help others who have been through similar situations. We need that. Like, we need combat veterans who have recovered to help other combat veterans. We need people. All right, I'm saying this with a grain of salt. I don't want this to happen, but we need people who have survived sex trafficking to help others who have survived sex trafficking, because
Mhm.
they can understand it from a personal level. I'm not saying we need people to be sex trafficked, not at all. I'm saying they're
Right.
the best that can help each other. I want an end to sex trafficking, just to be,
Yeah.
clear. But I'm trying to do a correlation. Is the best to help somebody is someone who's been through your situation, and
Mhm.
there are people like yourself and myself who can study, and we're like, yes, we've learned this, and we hear what you're saying. We don't understand exactly what you're saying because we haven't been through that, but we hear what you're saying. We're here for you, and we'll help you process through it. So therapists, life coaches are really great resources to help when you can't find somebody who is able to help you. And, hopefully one day there's no more sex trafficking, but it's going to be a huge cultural shift. Um, and probably another podcast topic. So we'll kind of move on from that.
Yeah.
But especially for combat veterans, it's never going to end. We're always going to be at war. I would love to see a Star Trek Earth where we're all at peace, but even in Star Trek, we had a massive World War III that decimated 90% of the population.
Right. And
And
then we go to war in space. So,
right, not as bad as
right.
Star Wars, but yeah,
That is about Star Wars. Yeah.
yeah.
Uh,
And so, yeah, it's
yeah.
yeah. Anyway, I'm on a
I
diatribe.
Yeah, but I appreciate it. But that's why I had you on the show for your your particular diatribes. Yeah, no, it's good. I see what you're saying. Where someone in the military, kind of needs someone else who's been on that journey to really help them in a particular way. Someone who's been sex
Right.
trafficked. I mean, that's awful, but like, if that's been your experience, you have a unique gift to offer back to someone who's still in there. Uh,
Right.
and I think, we could find shades of that in any experience. And,
Right.
I'm looking out, I thankfully have never experienced either. And I need you. I need your experience to like round out my little bubble of life, because I can get so,
Right.
ingrown into my own, like, theoretical, artsy, like, my furnace went out, I'm in crisis, world, to recognize, oh, wow, actually, there's a lot of life and death at stake. And
Right.
it's good for me to be pulled far out of my perspective,
Yeah.
far out of my experience for some perspective. And so I appreciate that. I
Yeah. And
appreciate
it's
you,
also vice versa. Go ahead.
uh, was, I was appreciating too, and trying to sum up what you're saying, like, it sounds like there really is like a lot of healing and hope possible for someone who's been through the brutalities of war. Like,
There is.
that journey to, out into the jungle, or that journey back into connection. It's very possible. It sounds like it's long
Yeah.
and it's difficult, but
It is.
it's possible.
It is. Yeah. Like, if you're expecting a change overnight or within like 6 months, I'm going to be like, you're not, you're fooling yourself.
Yeah.
You'll make shifts in 6 months, but you're not going to be fully over it. I mean, especially if you've been to war, you've been through a lot more. It's going to take more time to really unlodge a lot of things, change your perspective. And this is where, working with individuals like yourself is great. You haven't had that experience. It's more liberal arts, theology. It's something that we don't necessarily get on the combat arms side, where it's like, hey, I need that because I'm now back in the civilian world as a combat veteran. What the heck do I do right now? I don't get this. Like, I had someone walk by and it looked like a boy, but they were wearing a dress, or, it looks like a girl and they said they're he, him. What do I do? It's a whole culture shift, and they need individuals like yourself just as much, if not more, than individuals like me. I'd be a great start, but then it has to transition into working with someone like yourself who could be like, hey, okay, cool, you did a lot of great work. Now let's get to next point of your journey, where it's learning about what our society is like, learning about what our culture is like today, and more inclusivity. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks for saying that. And I can see that too, where growth, has many phases and many seasons, and ideally we get to access, like, multiple teachers along our journey. So, um, I really appreciate that, and I appreciate, kind of the ideas we were able to pull out today. And I'll probably tag it there, so I can mix and match it with with the other guy.
You're good.
But yeah, but if a listener wanted to reach out to you for some dialogue, or if someone wanted to become your client or your coaching client, where are you on the internet?
Sure. So mindaligned.com. So it's ED, so aligned. Just go there. And if you reach out and email me, or like email through the site, it'll be me who checks it. So I will personally respond to it, and I'll either write you back or give you a phone call, whichever your preference is.
Cool.
And you could also set up coaching services through there. As far as therapy goes, I kind of screen that just to make sure you're in a state that I'm licensed to be a therapist in. So just email me and we can talk about that.
All right. we'll make that happen. And on my end, you can support the podcast through patreon.com/outer circle for as little as $5 a month. And you can also go to New Pattern Counseling, newpatterncounseling.com. Contact my team through there. And if you're in Oregon, we can help you. If you're outside of Oregon, well, that's your choice. So that's all good. There's many, many beautiful places out there. So, yeah. Cool. Well, thank you again, Conrad. Always great to connect and to hear from your life and your experience, and watch out for the moose up there.
Yes, I will definitely do that. All right. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.